This podcast was brought to you by Meros cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Be a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilizes the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.
Hello and welcome to State of the Project Meros with myself, Cryptosi. There is another extremely handsome gentleman on the screen, but I'm not going to introduce him just yet. Before I do, I just wanted to welcome everybody to the new format that we have. I will have to apologize in advance if I'm not looking at the right places, because I'm not really sure how this works. My first time on camera as a presenter, but we've moved obviously from audio only to video also. So if you are digesting this in the audio only form, you can go to YouTube now and see our beautiful faces. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. That is a promise. You can have your money back if you are disappointed. But without any further ado, this is the State of the Project Meros. I am Cryptosi, and I am joined, as ever, by the enigmatic man himself, Kayaba. Kayaba, how are you, sir?
I am doing great today. Thanks for asking. My hair is a bit long. I actually haven't gotten it trimmed since Corona. The beard's is longer. I've been growing that out for a while now. I think my photos that I really got taken and shared the last time I did it was at a conference called TabConf, so this may be surprising to some people who have stayed up to date on me.
Yeah,
I do have a few followers. I'm not mainstream, but I do have a few people.
when we had our first video call, maybe about a week and a half ago, the first time I saw it, I had to congratulate you. The beard is almost as impressive as the Meros code base. Almost as impressive, not quite, but it's a fantastic beard. Well done. I've been trying to. I'm not as gifted in the beard department, so needs work. There you go.
You'll get there, Cryptosi. I agree with you.
Right. So let's get started. Yes. Oh, before we do, shall we discuss our? No, we'll come back to it if we feel like it. So let's continue with the big news from last month, which is ASMR, atomic swaps for Meros. Now, how have things developed within that whole project, I guess, or sub-project?
So I'm actually very excited for the news on that. So the amazing thing is that we finally added Meros support. I think at the time we talked, we only had Bitcoin Meros support, but we had the internals, we had the insides all mapped out to support other coins, and at the time we did cite Monero and Nano because those were at the forefront of our mind when me and the partner I worked with developed it. Especially as my partner, who goes by the nickname of Plasma Power, is actually a former Nano developer, extremely skilled. I have a lot of respect for him. I have tried to poach him onto our team many times, but just can't get him yet.
We'll get him. We'll get him.
Someday.
Yeah,
so,
we'll get him.
But he did work with me on this project, and he added Nano support, I do want to say at the end of the month, so probably just a few days after we recorded, because we generally record this 5 days before the end of the month. Anyways, and then 1 or 2 days after that, I think I did the press piece 1 day after, but the actual code was submitted 2 days after. We added Monero support as well. So right now, ASMR actually has working implementations for all 3 of those coins against Bitcoin. And awesome. You just compile it. You don't have to use a special build command for each project. It's not like each project has slightly different commands or builds. No, you just built it, and then you just specify Monero, Nano, or Meros at runtime, and it selects it, and you can move forward.
How do you feel? How does that rank in terms of pride for your programming achievements? Is that one of your most proud programming moments, or is it in your top 3?
I've never really thought about that. Just the whole concept of what have I programmed that I'm proud of. Because generally when I consider that, I have to go back and think, I remember just 4 years ago, I wrote some decently bad code. It worked, and I was happy with it at the time, but I've since grown. And the fact that I've since grown actually just it makes me want to say that older code might not have been as good, even though it probably was great for the time, and it's something I really appreciate. And looking back at history, if it says something. This is really long, I'm sorry. But it's definitely up there as one of the projects I'm most proud of. Actually, no, when we're going on a whole project basis, yeah, it's definitely the second one.
Okay.
Meros obviously being the first, because I really can't name anything else that would come close to the two of them.
No, I understand. Meros is probably your life's work.
Yep.
Right. Okay. I went into the GitHub whilst doing my research for this. I wasn't really expecting to find much, actually, knowing what you've been working on. But it's a good question. So the GitHub does look particularly quiet this month. Where have you been focusing your energies this month with regards to Meros?
So there have been a couple of things that I've been working on. The first of which was our BLS code. So one of the many things Meros does, which I'm happy about, is it uses BLS signatures, which are amazing. They basically, when a merit holder creates a vote, we can combine every single vote for the entire block. I mean, we could do it further. There's just no advantage to doing it further, into a single 48-byte signature. Thousands of signatures for hundreds of transactions, if not thousands of transactions, really depends on TPS and usage, both of which I'm hoping to be quite high. But yeah, we can thankfully we can just combine them all into a single 48-byte signature, and that's all the disk space it will take up. And I'm just really excited by that, but it's still a very early space. While Ethereum 2.0, Chia, and some other projects are using it, it's still going under standardization. Zcash was one of the first to use it, and they used it in ZK Snarks. Or specifically, like, their implementation of it.
Yeah.
Zero cash and all that, because, there's multiple technically different variants. So they used it all the way back then, and they have done what's effectively become the transmission standards. When you say, here's what a signature looks like, here's how you convert it into bytes, here's how you send it over the network. They have basically standardized that just because the way they did it makes sense and everyone else has adopted it. There was no need to not be compliant with that. But there's a lot of other intricacies when using it for signatures instead of for privacy. And because of that, there's still work being done. And we were on a different standard. So we're since upgrading to work with the latest code from Ethereum 2.0 and other organizations. And while we do that, we're also optimizing our usage of it, which should lead to some pretty quality performance gains.
Well, there are still. I did speak to another developer. Shout out to Spock from Devolt about BLS in a podcast a few months ago, and he was quite interested in the privacy aspects. But he did mention that there was quite a lot of room for optimization within BLS signatures in particular. Have you found the same, that there's quite a lot of room for optimizations?
When you talk about optimizations, you're not really talking about, if you say you're trying to optimize your running, you're not talking about magically being able to run at 80 miles per hour. You're talking about getting closer to the human limits. So one of the unfortunate aspects of BLS is it's slower than other systems. And it's still used because of its aggregation properties. You can combine signatures into a single signature, and there's still many reasons to use it. There's a reason we use it. I'm not trying to say otherwise. But it is slower than other signature systems. And a lot of libraries out there are early. I'll go with early. They're still figuring it out. They're still making sure that they're keeping up to date on the standards. So yes, those libraries can definitely be optimized further, but even once they're optimized, it's still going to be hard to compare them to libraries for, say, ED25519, the signature scheme that Monero and Nano uses. And Meros also does use it for transactions. We just don't use it for votes. Because for transactions, we definitely appreciate that speed. But for votes, when you have tens to hundreds of votes for a single transaction, it really benefits from the space saving.
Okay. Another line with the GitHub being so quiet, I guess, is business development. Has Meros started to move into business development? I'm mostly speaking about things like bounties for other developers and things like that. Have you started to consider those things and implement them even, maybe?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of forgot the original question and focused on BLS. I did also want to say we've also been doing work on something called transaction families, which is this whole internal thing. And then,
let me get onto that. That's one of my questions, so I'll get on.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. But the other thing I've personally been working on is exactly that. I have been looking into what issues would be good for bounties, because when I look for a bounty, I don't want to just look at, what someone else can do, because of course we use NIM and it's a very large code base, so sometimes it's not really worth it to assign some of the issues to other people just because of the time it would take them. That said, I also try to look for issues where if someone does this, they'll start appreciating the wider code base and they'll be more likely to come back for other bounties or even just to contribute in general. Even on a bounty basis, I am looking for people who at least appreciate the project, and I hope that, maybe they'll care about it, but they're there for the bounty. I'm not going to just demand that they care about it or refuse to pay out, of course. Not being unfair. I just have hopes that using bounties, not only will we get quality code, but we'll also get the attention from it.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's definitely been considering some bounties. It's been difficult filtering out the issues to find what would be good fits, but there's definitely a couple, especially this one that, it's just this one database issue that I've had for a while, in which there's like this one edge case in which it's not even significant data. It's just, it doesn't get handled correctly in this one edge case. And while it would never affect mainnet, to be technically correct, it has to implement it. Like, I'm not trying to make it sound like a big deal. It's just, like, it's not even like, if no one ever 51% attacks the network, it's not going to be a problem. No, it's like legitimately just not something that breaks the node, but it's not technically correctly handled. So despite not causing damage, it's always nagged at me. And it's technically getting the test to be like, hey, this isn't right. I have spent hours on it, just trying to figure out the exact reasons why. It's been a process. Anyways, so that's definitely one I may just pass off just because I'm a bit annoyed with it.
I mean, probably need some fresh eyes to look at it.
Exactly.
Some fresh eyes. But I'll tell you what does not need fresh eyes. It's issue 248, transaction families. I particularly like this one because it was one of those ones where you gave a nice long explanation for in the GitHub. I will put a link to it in the description, obviously. But could you tell me what the issue is and where we stand on it? It was put in about 24 days ago, so it was just after our last podcast. But yeah, if you could tell me about this issue.
So this is one of the two things that I was working on when it comes to code, along with business development, of which has involved bounties and also some expansion, which we will probably have an opportunity to discuss later. I hope so.
Yeah.
So for transaction families, this is one of the two things I was working on, and it's interesting to say the least. So let's say you have Cryptosi, you send me money. You're very polite. You heard it's my birthday. You sent me $10 million because you're just that kind of stand-up guy.
Yeah, it happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you're just really generous like that.
Yeah.
So as you send me $10 million, I'm like, but wait, I could double my money if I send this to this Twitter account. No, but to talk about a legitimate attack vector on the network itself, you say I can double my money if I just create two transactions spending these funds. I create one back to myself and one to an exchange. I just reuse the same input.
The old double spend.
Exactly. But when this happens, you actually have to go through a process of figuring out which one is correct. So Meros will instantly stop the two from confirming for an hour. Actually, it's going to be roughly, I think it ends up being 110 minutes that it locks the transactions for, because that's how long it takes to technically finalize. That's how long it takes. It takes 110 minutes before a transaction is technically finalized when there's a dispute like that. And on one hand, that's not instant. On the other hand, I don't care about transactions that someone was trying to use to cheat the network. So,
could there be a case where you could have a double spend by accident? Is it possible to have a double spend by accident?
Oh, yeah, no. If you have a wallet which you create a transaction with, and then the wallet doesn't shut down properly, it doesn't say, oh, yeah, I already used this input. It can say, if you then go to immediately make another transaction without properly tracking that inside, yeah, that can happen, and I understand that's an unfortunate risk. But I would much prefer the security that comes with waiting than risking a double spend, even though, yes, a poor wallet implementation may be affected.
Okay.
So what we do when we detect a family is, so that's what we call a family. When two transactions spend the same input, we just call it a family. These are together, they have to finalize at the same time, they have to follow the same rules, only one of them can win. That said, it also gets a bit more complex. So that's what a family is. But then let's say that, oh my gosh, it's Christmas. Cryptosi sent me another 10 million. Such as it. You sent me 10 million twice. Let's say I do it again and I create two sets of double spends. But then finally, I create a transaction for $20 million to an exchange. So we have two double spends and yet another spending all those inputs. So because of that, we have one transaction family of the original double spend, one family of the new one, but now we have a transaction that fits into both families. And we have to say, like, which of these two? Is it in this one or is it in this one? And the answer is it's in both. It spends both of those inputs. It's trying to double spend both. Therefore, it's in both families. So what we do is we have to merge the families. And we have to combine them. This whole thing, and the end result is, as we're doing this, we're just trying to make sure that we properly track transactions so we can finalize them properly, because there's just a lot of rules on this to remain secure. And that's just what this is about. It's about properly cataloging transactions so when we go to finalize them, we can make sure we do it correctly.
How do you test for something like that? Do you have to just go through all the iterations of the possible double spends that people can come up with? Is it something that worries you massively that you may make a mistake and people are allowed to double spend? And if they do, what would be the recourse? Would you end up forking? What would happen?
So there's a few things that we do to test Meros, and they're quite extensive. One of the things we do is called fuzz testing. We have Meros is written in NIM, and we have a set of NIM tests.
Sorry, what did you say? Fuzz
testing, right.
Okay.
So what we do is at the start of each test, we pick a random number, and we use that as the basis.
Yep.
And we just randomly generate data. We just randomly generate data. It can be transactions, it can be blocks, it can be signatures, it can be whatever. We just randomly generate and we just throw it at Meros. And then the tests themselves keep track of it, and they say, this is what should have happened, this is what should have happened. And at every step, it checks to make sure Meros did the same thing. So even within the Meros code base itself, we basically have two different implementations in it. Just one to actually do it, and then one to properly verify it and keep a lot more data on hand and track it and so on. So that's what we do for fuzz testing, and that tests just a lot of variations, and that gets a lot of the possibilities out of there. That said, yes, you do still have to tell it what to fuzz. And It's not exactly like, oh my gosh, magic. No, you can still miss things. And then we also have the Python test. We have an independent implementation of the Meros protocol in Python, which actually, it for now uses the same BLS library for signatures, but in the future, part of my BLS work is moving it to a different one. Uses a different ED 25519 library. It uses a different library for something we use called sketches. It really is quite independent. It's something I'm proud of, just to formally verify we've matched the protocol. So, and then in Python, we test specific cases. So we generate specific transactions that are wonky. Like, yeah, sure, we have a test for a standard data transaction, just publish data to the network, make sure it's tracked. But then we also have one for double spends. We have one for the merit removal possibilities, where if a merit holder double votes, they get penalized for it. And this is one of the things, we just go through the double spend possibilities, and we test for them. It should be noted, though, there's only one way to double spend, to reuse an input. That's the only way. We're not talking about how can you double spend. We're talking about how do we manage families? How do we handle those weird edge cases where you have A, B, and then a transaction fits into both of them? There's a lot of edge cases, is that point. And so there's definitely tests we can do there.
So it's while it is a big deal and it is, I guess, quite a worry for all of us, because you've spent so much time on these Python tests, which we have had podcasts where we've spoken pretty much about the Python for the entire podcast. So it isn't something that is that has gone undetected until now. It's something that you have kept an eye on. But I do want to move on to another issue which you closed, but it was critical. So I'd like to speak about it. Not sure if it's related, but some beaten transaction mentioned on chain are pruned. What's that? Oh, do you know what? I've cut off half of my notes. Yeah, that's right. So it's closed. It's critical issue number 238. I'm going to put a link to it in the description. But yeah, that's what it says. Some beaten transactions mentioned on chain are pruned. Could you explain what that is? Did it have anything to do with one of the test nets that we already ran, one of the developer test nets that you ran? And yeah, could you explain to us what that critical issue was and how you fixed it?
Well, we did do a lovely stream at the start of one of our test nets, which I remember very fondly. So you can include yourself, Cryptosi, part of the family. So this was actually an interesting bug because, yes, it did actually bring down quite a few testnet nodes at the time, and it was created in response to a testnet. Basically, there was a block in Meros which referenced a transaction. Again, blocks in Meros don't actually contain transactions. If they did, there would be so many problems. But they contained references to the votes, and those are what verify transactions. We do have instant transactions without going to zero conf. We've done extensive work on this. But the blocks still reference votes which reference transactions, just to keep everything coordinated.
Yep.
And as part of that, when we have a block finished, specifically every 6 blocks, we quote unquote finalize a transaction. We just say, hey, well, you could add a new block of data for this. It literally would just be spamming the network. It happened an hour ago, leave it be. And that's why I say technically finalizing, because all the votes have been in for a while, but there's just no reason to keep it going, so we just do a final check at that point in time. And the reason I bring that up is just to also comment earlier about how it takes 110 minutes. We wait for the finalization to occur, and then we actually wait for another finalization block just for different reasons. It spent a lot of time on this. Kind of sounds janky. It's just complicated.
Yeah.
But so as we're doing these final checks to close up a transaction, that transaction has to exist. If it doesn't exist, it means that we're finalizing the transaction which doesn't exist. It's an impossible edge case, and when Meros reaches one of these, it says, no, I'm not going to continue operating. Like, this is obviously broken. I'm not going to continue. And that means the node shuts down. And when that happens, when an impossible edge case happens, yeah, the node shuts down, and that can end a testnet if it happens to enough nodes. And it's why we have these testnets.
But when we had our node shut down during that developer's testnet, the video for which we could still release one day, I'm hoping, were the nodes sending the correct error messages at that point? Was there an issue with the error messages? Because I remember we had nodes kind of just falling off, right?
I think every testnet so far has had one of these, and the most recent one, it actually took, I think, half a day before it started happening. So progress. And then one of our nodes, for every testnet, I've run 3 nodes myself, just under the Meros crypto domain, seed 1, seed 2, and seed 3. One of them, I think, stayed up for the entire testnet, just never crashed. I was happy with that. So when these happen, they're exceedingly rare. Like, it's just one bug, and then generally, once it's triggered for the first time, some node on the network helps keep it alive in some way. Like, the node itself didn't crash, but it can trigger others, and it's fixed by the next testnet. So this specific one, all I knew is that transactions weren't being finalized. And if they weren't being finalized, they were failing to finalize because it didn't exist. And if it was failing to finalize because it didn't exist, that means that the transaction was deleted. So it would have had to exist at some point, or Meros would have errored out earlier. So it was actually this one edge case. But I'm trying to, 1 second, I'm actually going to pull up the issue, because this was a while ago. I think it was about 4 weeks ago I fixed this, as you were saying. So
3.5 weeks.
Got it.
24 days.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember it. So one of the things we do is we prove transactions. If a transaction existed, but no one actually voted on it, we say, okay, why bother saving this? It was never voted on. This transaction's gone. It can't be finalized because some other transaction, a double spend, already beat it. So why bother saving it? And we had a faulty case where we thought transactions which were voted on actually weren't. And because of that, we thought they were just bogus transactions. No need to keep them, save the database space. But it turns out we actually did vote on them. And because of that, we deleted the transaction when we shouldn't have deleted it. And it was just about finding that edge case and solving it.
Okay. Good, because I remember, and I remember the mystery and being like, oh, I wonder what this is, and I hope it's not too severe, and I'm glad it's not. Okay, I wanted to discuss something else that we've previously discussed off air. Blockchain Explorer for Meros. Given that Meros it's a different type of blockchain to most that are out there, so I guess you can't just go ahead and use the standard solutions that are out there. What do you have coming up for a blockchain explorer for Meros, and how are you thinking about implementing that, and what type of skills you think would be needed to get a blockchain explorer up for Meros that was good quality? I know you're not one to hack things together.
Thanks. So a block explorer, it can really be defined as two separate. So first of all, yes, you're right. We can't just use a Bitcoin block explorer. We have very different inner technology, and it's not feasible or worth it to try. I mean, technically, you can get Bitcoin to make you cappuccinos by deploying it to a coffee maker with extra code, but why would you? Just write coffee maker software. Don't try to cram up the existing Bitcoin code base in there. You don't want to butcher it. So a block explorer can be called into two distinct parts. One, I would like to, let's say it's the indexing engine. I'm not really sure there's a standard term, like, don't get me wrong, indexing engine, people will understand it, but it's not really the term for the core of a block explorer. If you ask a Bitcoin node and you say, how many addresses are in existence? It's going to be like, I have no idea. I don't track that. Why would I? I'm a node. I don't need to know that info. And it does track some stuff, of course, like the amount of Bitcoin in existence, and I'm not trying to say otherwise, but it deems a lot of data just irrelevant. And it is. If you're running a Bitcoin node, or if you are a Bitcoin node, and you're trying to handle a block, to handle that block, you don't have to know how many addresses are in existence, how many addresses have funds. You just have to say, yeah, this is a valid block. And that's where block explorers come in that they do track this extra data. They provide new ways to traverse the data. They render specific statistics about that data. But in order to do that, they have to maintain their own database. And this requires going through the blocks on the blockchain and the transactions, independent of the core node software, just because the node isn't tracking that data. So it has to say, hey, you're not tracking this, but I want it, so I'm going to go calculate it. So it has to index everything, decide how it wants to categorize it, decide what statistics it wants to glean from it. And that's the core of a block explorer. And I've actually been thinking about what Meros would need for that, what type of extra added functionality Meros would benefit from when we're looking for something like this. And there's definitely a lot of fun things out there, from just statistics on mining to statistics on merit holders to statistics on voting to just browsing top addresses based on activity, or if you want to see like which ones belong to exchanges. So it's definitely something to be considering. Beyond those considerations, then yeah, of course, there's what the user sees. You don't want to go to a user and say, oh yeah, we have an indexing engine. Oh, you don't know how to use it because you can't write Rust or C? Okay, get out of here. I don't care about you. No, you have to provide the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript. You can't just say, LOL, script kitty, get out of here, scrub. So, of course, you have to have the indexing engine and you have to have the site itself. And one of the things that we've talked about off air, because I've been asking for your advice, because I know you always have your ear to the ground on usability in business, is what we can do to align the indexing engine beyond just a block explorer. Say you were an exchange or a payment processor. Would there be something the Meros node doesn't track just because it uses up a lot of disk space? But it's something that would immensely benefit one of these parties. And if so, could they run the indexing engine on their own so they don't have to write their own software, so we can make the ecosystem more accessible, considering, brand new code base, there's already some barrier if you only currently support Bitcoin and Litecoin. So with that consideration in mind, I've been considering making the indexing engine completely separate, and then we could just write a simple Node.js web server and the relevant HTML, CSS for the average user to use it. So yeah, it's definitely something I've been thinking about doing. And at the same time, I don't have the time for it. So speaking towards business development, in bounties, I did think I was going to post something on Gitcoin about that. I'm not sure whether it be classified as a hackathon or not. I'm actually meant to pull it up. But yeah, I think I want to have an open contest on building the best Meros block explorer. Still thinking about the specifications I want to provide, of course, and we would probably offer a first, second, and third place. And hope to get a lot of people interested in Meros.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, actually. And I do remember the conversation we had. It was I was laying on the couch, actually, at the time. So, yeah, it was a really, really good conversation. With regards to a hackathon, just in general terms, how do you feel about hackathons? And do you feel that they create the type of software that is I guess by the process kind of reviewed by its peers? How like what sort of quality of software do you think you get gleaned from a hackathon? Because ultimately, I guess you decide which is the best. And if it's a hackathon on something which you yourself are not expert in, what makes you feel that you're going to actually be able to pick the best result from all of the candidates in terms of not only security, but I guess resilience and reliability and all those sorts of things?
So just to start with the first question about hackathons in general, I've actually participated in a couple in person, and they were actually a lot of fun. 24-hour hackathons. You got to stay up all night. They have a couch if you want to take a break.
They're actually a lot of fun to watch, hackathons. Even if, like me, you're not a coder, they're actually a lot of fun to watch. You watch the teams come together and you're like, okay, who's going to do what? Sometimes if you get to see them, I went to a conference in Berlin the year before I met you, actually, and they had a hackathon there. And I remember I went into the room and I looked around and I thought, oh, well, that guy looks really clever. He's got no hair, blah, blah, blah. And and then it came back a day later and we saw who had made the best thing. But anyway, from a viewer's point of view,
seeing teams working, asking the interesting ideas they have going on.
Yeah.
Because a hackathon, so there's two types, of course. You have the one where it's a few months and you want people to build the full project, and then you have the ones where it's just one day.
Yeah.
With the one day ones, you really are looking for original ideas. You're looking for the experiments. You're looking for something that could fail horribly, but damn, does it sound amazing in the moment. And you're looking for the quickest possible implementation. And of course, it's going to be judged on, one of the things that's going to be judged on is accessibility. And because of that, you want it looking clean. But it's not going to be optimized. It may not be secure. But, it has that feature list. And it proves the point.
But for your Explorer, you're going to need...
No, obviously
right?
not.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that... So what we would be looking for is we are looking for something quickly done. I'm not going to say mad dash or rush, but no, we are looking for expedience. We're looking to get the phones out there. And from there, we can properly review how it's gone so far and expand and make sure the users have a voice and what functionality they want to see. And I would definitely also ask you to reach out to some of your contacts to see what a business may appreciate from it.
Yeah.
So the time scale I've personally been thinking of is 2 to 3 weeks, which is not the longest for hackathons. Sometimes a hackathon will go on for a couple of months, but it's definitely to give the project, give the team enough time to really think it through, learn Meros, make sure that they understand the functionality we're discussing, and work on something that isn't going to die after being run for 10 minutes at a time. Something that is reliable.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is about right. We have, I don't know I guess you have them in the States as well, but we call them sprints. And it'd be just a short space of time where you do actually get quite a lot of done. Okay, so anybody watching or listening, if you're still using that old technology, just audio only, if you do feel that this is something that interests you, obviously join the Discord. The link will be in the description. It always is. And yeah, feel free to get involved. Kayaba, I'm really cautious of the...
1 second.
Well, that was scary. What was that?
I will be back in just 1 second. My dog... Actually, no, I think my lighting's still good. Is my lighting good enough to do? Yeah, my dog tripped over the power cord for my light.
Well, it sounded like a mini earthquake, but as long as the dog's okay.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, no, my dog just tripped over the power cord for my lamp, so as long as the lighting's good enough to continue, yeah.
Yep, you still look good. Right, okay, so we're running out of time, so I want to get two more quick questions. They are kind of my generic questions. When is the next testnet? Oh,
So,
whilst you're answering, I'm going to be quite rude and look through Discord because I remember seeing a question in there that was worth
all right.
checking out.
So, I am a bit conflicted. Part of me thinks the next testnet should be the testnet, the big one, the one that's going to last for multiple weeks and lead up to mainnet. But I also think I have to take a step back, make sure that it's going to be beneficial. I do think it's going to be beneficial to do another one for a scale of a week before we jump to 4 weeks. Part of the reason I don't want to is just because of how the features are coming along. It's kind of, there's just so little major features left and they're coming along so quickly together. It's kind of hard to decide what middle point do I want to use. It's hard to decide if I want to do it after feature X, feature Y, or feature Z. Or I want to be feature X and Z. It's this whole thing. And I also kind of don't want to spend a few days away because they do take up a few days just to keep an eye on it, monitor it, be in chat. So yeah, I do think we're going to have one more in probably by the end of this month that we'll have started. I wouldn't be surprised if roughly 3 weeks from now it started.
Okay. Well, by the end of this month, when this video goes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Generally, you've always stuck by this kind of philosophy of when it's ready, it gets released. So I'm assuming that it's going to be the same with testnet. You're not going to rush through to go to the final time. The question that that I had seen in Discord, I've just pulled it up. We kind of covered it already, but it was any thoughts? It was from a new member. I haven't seen their name before, but a new member called Crypto. Any thoughts on grants for community developers to build apps on Meros for the ecosystem? What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to kind of chop that down and kind of translate it into Meros speak, because I guess he's kind of coming from an Ethereum type background where there is apps on the basis of that. But I guess a better question would be, will there ever be a time where people can build apps on the Meros ecosystem? Do you see it as moving towards, as I'm answering this question, I can remember I've asked it before, but do you ever see Meros being the type of place where you can have decentralized apps built on top of it, or is it going to stay strictly as a cryptocurrency?
So the fact that we have data transactions means you technically can build smart contracts on top of Meros. The network itself wouldn't enforce them, but you can have an app that learns of new transactions from Meros, and as it does that, as it learns of these transactions, it treats them as their instructions for a smart contract engine and does the operations on them. There's certain limitations to not having a native virtual machine like Ethereum. You wouldn't be able to lock Meros in it, so you couldn't really do a Meros DEX with it. Well, actually, you could thanks to the new atomic swap protocol.
And it would work perfectly, actually.
Because
on something.
Because you would count the tokens as the swappable object, but you couldn't time lock Meros or do some other traditional smart contract interactions.
Okay.
But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of things you can do. But I think the main discussion should just be around projects around Meros, projects utilizing Meros as a cryptocurrency, projects building technology based on Meros, projects which are accepting Meros or using Meros to light the way for the project as a whole. And that is something I would love to get grants going for. But I said this when I answered the question to him originally. Meros isn't funded. I've worked on it for over 2.5 years now. I've definitely given it funding when I had the opportunity. I may not have the opportunity to do a Block Explorer hackathon, not for $100,000 or anything flashy, but I have the opportunity to do one. And along the same way, I can't budget a grant program right now, and that's something that we'd have to wait till after launch to see if we have the budget. But it should also be noted we have the Meros Development Fund.
Yeah.
Once we launch, the community will be able to say, if someone says, hey, I want to build this project around Meros, the community will be able to say, hell yeah, that sounds great, let's give you some Meros. It'll be given out weekly, it's going to be this amount, and the community will enable that, because that's why we built the Meros Development Fund.
So I guess as far as Crypto Atom, I will thank him. He did join the Discord and ask questions, so I will thank him for that. So as far as Crypto Atom is concerned, I guess the answer really is no, but yes. So there won't be any specific grants coming from centralized authority, but the Meros Development Fund will enable and it will fund people who are building things for the Meros ecosystem, providing the Meros holders see value within that. Okay.
I'm definitely interested in doing it myself if I have the opportunity. I would expect the Meros Development Fund to go mostly to me in the first round just because of my involvement. We're still establishing some other players such as you, Cryptosi.
Yes, I'm going to have I'll have my hand in that pocket, definitely.
Okay. 100%. But I'm not going to just say if I get, say, 50% of it, I'm not just going to say mine and walk away. No, I'm going to, if I have the opportunity to, I'll definitely give that throughout the community, and I'll definitely try to support efforts I think worthy. Because even though those funds were given to me, not going to say, oh, sweet, I can go out and buy 10 PS5s.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out and say, I can buy one PS5 and a Block Explorer. Kind of be responsible about it. You can have fun. You can pay your rent.
Yeah.
You don't have to become a monk and only pay your rent and buy food. But no, jokes aside, it really is about Meros as a project. I've been about that for the past 2.5 years, and I will maintain to be about that in the future. So if I have the opportunity to, I'm definitely interested in creating a grant program on my end.
Awesome. Okay. Last question. Same as always. Oh, I just made the cat jump. Same as always is when Mainnet. And with the caveat that last month spoke, you did give a date. You actually gave a date as the end of the year. So
I said it would be ready by the end of the year is my current plan. Depending on holidays, I don't exactly want to launch on Christmas Eve.
Yeah,
I don't feel that successful. So it may end up being, even if it's ready by end of the year, we may wait until like January 5th or something to see if people a lot of time around the holidays. Well, it'd be kind of romantic to launch at New Year's Eve. Yeah. It's also kind of pretentious, and I just think that's a publicity stunt and not actually something good for the network, Because arguably the attention would be good for it, but it would also be a poor launch just based on scope. Yeah. So I would want to wait a few days. Still hoping to be ready by the end of the year, but there's not really much more to say than that.
All right. Well, on that bombshell, I've stolen that from a TV presenter in the UK. But thank you very much for your time, Kayaba. I've really enjoyed this new format. I guess we could speak a little bit about what software we're using, because we did, before we went on air, we can share this, I guess. Before we went on the air, we had a little spat. We have these spats, Kayaba and I. We had a little spat about what we should use. I wanted to use Google Meet because obviously I don't give a damn about privacy and X, Y, Z. And Kayaba put his foot down. He disconnected the video and he said, no, we're not doing that, Cryptosi. We're going to use Jitsi. When we got into Jitsi, Kayaba gave me a nice lengthy reason as to why we are using Jitsi. So I guess it would be good to share it, because I guess I didn't, not to say I learned something, but I think that this type of aspect is often missed within people that use technology. So Kayaba, why are we using Jitsi and not Google? And don't say just because Cryptosi is a scrub. Why are we using Jitsi and not Google?
Your suggestion of using Google Meet was pretty scrubby. So I don't think a lengthy explanation is 10 words. I think that's a short, reasonable one. But I actually learned of Jitsi from the Monero community, who have widely adopted it. I'm going to call that they were participating in. It's an alternative to video chat platforms. I mean, here we are. We're talking over video. We're recording. I can share this link with anyone and they could join in. It's very accessible. But it's also end-to-end encrypted, and it's also doing a lot to maintain data privacy and security. And it's something I really respect the mission of, especially as they have grown to the size where they could be considered, I would say they didn't start as a corporation, but due to their scope and the fact they are a business, I'd say they've grown. But despite that, they still have a free, secure, and privacy-respecting platform. And it's something I really appreciate the ethos of, and it has the functionality to be used with mass adoption. So it's definitely a platform I support.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you for, you taught me a thing there, because I was going to be just negligent and ignorant and just use Google. But I'm someone who's very interested in privacy, as you know. So I think, this is a good time to plug Jitsi and say to people, if you do have the choice, go ahead and use the one that keeps your rights intact. Google have got
all the problems with Zoom recently.
Yeah.
I would also like to say neither of us are paid by Jitsi. This is not a paid sponsorship or showcase.
Okay.
We didn't know them until an hour ago. So
with the caveat of yet. Neither of us are paid by Jitsi yet. However, when they see our faces and they hear the podcast and they see what we're doing, it would make sense for them to employ us as ambassadors. I'm available. I'm not sure about you, Kayaba, but exactly, and we have the beards to match. Right, so Kayaba, thank you so much for your time. I'm already super excited about the next video cast, or I don't know what they're called, vlogs in a month's time. So thank you very much for that. For anybody who's reached this point, congratulations, achievement unlocked. You've reached the end. Please join the Discord and check us all out. Come and meet us. We're in there. We're friendly, the guys and ladies, and it's really starting to take shape now. Meros is getting to the point now where we are genuinely excited. It's been a long year. We've been doing these podcasts for almost a long year, a long road. We've been doing this podcast for 2 years coming up, I'd say, or maybe even over 2 years. So yes, and we're almost there. So Kayaba, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for the beard. We all appreciate it. And we'll see you in the November update. Thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe and all that other good stuff. I'm Cryptosi. He's Kayaba. Maybe he's Kayaba. I don't know, whichever side. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This show is brought to you by PivX, private instant verified transactions. With its groundbreaking zero coin staking and masternodes, PivX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivex.org.